This video is brought to you by John Robson Guitar Tuition. If you enjoy the content, please consider supporting the channel by enrolling on a course, purchasing some guitar lessons or a t-shirt, or you can join my Patreon. Now, on with the show. Hello chaps, welcome once again to John Robson Guitar Tuition. As always, I do hope you're well. Now then, recently I've been doing a bunch of videos about my 5 favourite tones in various different categories. I've done my 5 favourite recorded examples of the Les Paul sound. Then I did the Stratocaster, and last week I did the Telecaster. And this week I thought I'd turn my attention to another iconic slice of rock and roll paraphernalia, the Marshall amplifier in all of its guises. So today we're going to talk about, or I'm going to talk about, 5 of my favourite recorded examples of the Marshall sound, beginning with
Eric Clapton, Stepping Out.
Yes, indeed. Where else could you begin other than Eric Clapton's tone on the John Mayall and the Blues Breakers album, the famous Beano album. This was Eric playing through, what was it, I think a JTM 45, or basically the equivalent combo. I'm not entirely, clued up on model numbers and so on, but it was basically a Gibson Les Paul through a Marshall valve combo, and what a tone it produces. It is just one of those legendary, iconic tones. There are so many videos on YouTube about, how Eric got this tone and, how you can get this tone. It's such an iconic sound that so many people have, sought to emulate it. What I like about this tone is it's just straight ahead meat and potatoes guitar plus amp, isn't it? It's not swathes of cavernous reverb or, kind of clever ping-pong timed delays or loads of chorus or flange or modulation or anything like that. It's just a great guitar player playing a fantastic guitar, a Les Paul, through an absolutely era-defining amplifier. If you want to know what the Marshall amplifier sound is, you could do a lot worse than listen to any track off this album. If I had to pick a favourite track on the album, I think it would have to be one of the instrumentals. Probably everybody goes for Hideaway, don't they? But I think for me it would probably be Stepping Out. That for me, I just love that track just that little bit more. I'm going to link to all of these tracks down in the description in case you've been living under a rock for 40 years and you've never heard it before. But maybe you just want to go and remind yourself of how great a guitar sound that is. So, Eric Clapton's tone on the Beano album. Next,
Jimi Hendrix, Little Wing.
Yes, indeed. Now, I could have filled up this whole video with fine examples of a Les Paul through a Marshall amplifier, but I decided to cast the net a little bit wider, and we've got a couple more humbucker-equipped guitars on the list, but we've also got some single coil shenanigans going on with this track. Obviously, Hendrix was playing a Strat through a Marshall, and what I like about this is it's an entirely different sound to the sound that Eric had on, the Beano album, but it's still identifiably a Marshall amp tone, isn't it? You can tell that he's not playing through a twin reverb, for example. It's identifiably a Marshall tone. It has this weird combination of a very, very kind of pristine, hi-fi-like clarity to it, but with enough fur around the edges to make you realise that you're not listening to somebody playing through a hi-fi amp. It's got that, again, identifiably Marshall-y tone. It's crisp, but it's warm at the same time. It's clear, but it's not clinical. Obviously Hendrix's playing on this is just so beautifully lyrical and fluent that, he could have played it through, a Roland Cube, if such a thing had existed in those days, and got, a fantastic sound. But the fact that he was playing through a Marshall, through something that was identifiably a Marshall tone, just is the crowning glory for me. And it's proof, if anything else, that, do you remember that free music paper that used to get in guitar shops? It was called Making Music. Maybe it still exists, but every now and again they used to have a glossary of terms in there. Well, what musicians say and what they actually mean. And I remember one of those was a chap saying, "I'm a Marshall man," and the meaning was, "I'm a noisy bugger." Well, it's proof that Hendrix's tone here is proof that Marshall amps aren't necessarily all about the loud, shouty, overdriven, sustainy kind of, heavily distorted kind of tone. They do have the sensitivity there, as you will probably remind yourself when you go and listen to this track. Next.
Gary Moore, Oh Pretty Woman.
Yeah, now this one is all about the shouty, loud, rock and roll, overdrive, sustainy kind of stuff. I remember when this album came out, there was a bit of a buzz going around that Gary was going to be doing a blues album, and I was very, very excited about this because I'm a huge Gary Moore fan, and as I've mentioned many times before, I had this live video of him where there's backstage footage of him and Phil Lynott jamming a bit of blues. And I thought at the time, wouldn't it be great if Gary did an album like that? And lo and behold, a few years later he did. And Gary's tone on this whole album, but this track in particular for me, if you want the definitive sound of, a cranked Marshall, not just a cranked Marshall JTM 45, which is what he was playing through, but also a cranked Marshall Governor pedal, classic pedal, then look no further than this album, and certainly look no further than this track. Gary's playing is absolutely on fire here. I love the fact that he's trading licks with Albert King as well, and the contrast between the two styles. There's one moment in the tune where Albert's played a solo, and then Gary kind of comes in with his solo, and it near enough blows your head off when you hear it for the first time. Absolutely fantastic performance, fantastic guitar playing, fantastic guitar, and a fantastic definitive Marshall amplifier tone. So that's why that's on this list. Next.
Richie Blackmore, All Night Long.
Yeah, no, this takes me back. I wasn't really a big kind of heavy rock fan for most of my early childhood, I just didn't get it. And then I started playing the guitar, and suddenly I started thinking, oh, hey, okay, now I get it. And this coincided with the late 70s, early 80s, when, kind of rock bands were starting to get on top of the pops. I remember seeing Black Sabbath on top of the pops. I remember seeing Judas Priest on top of the pops, Living After Midnight. I think that was probably the track that, switched me on to kind of, okay, there's something about this genre of music. But, hearing that Rainbow album, Down to Earth, for the first time, that opening track, All Night Long, what a guitar tone on that intro riff. I mean, that just blew me away. It was like, again, it's identifiably Marshall. I didn't know anything about Marshall amps at the time. I think it was probably about 11-year-old, but I knew I liked that noise that was coming out of the speakers. And, then you start seeing people on TV, and they always seem to have these big black kind of tall box-like amplifiers behind them with that word Marshall on them, and you start to kind of join the dots and realise that, okay, maybe that sound is, maybe those big black boxes are responsible for that sound that I like. What an incredible tone Richie gets on this, well, the whole album, frankly. I'm not the world's biggest Richie Blackmore fan, but I do love this album. I absolutely adore it. I don't think there's a weak track on it, and just what a way to open an album. Back in the days when we used to buy LPs, vinyl, track one, side one was always, an important track, wasn't it? You don't get a second chance to make a first impression, and boy, does Richie make a fantastic impression with his tone on this. So yet another Stratocaster through a Marshall, producing an absolutely glorious tone. Identifiably, once again, a Stratocaster. You can tell you're listening to a guitar with single coil pickups, but it's still identifiably Marshall, isn't it? So, there you go. Let's see what's next.
Angus Young, You Shook Me All Night Long.
Okay, you cannot talk about Marshall amplifiers without mentioning the famous AC/DC brothers, can you? And yeah, I mean, 50% of this tone, of the guitar tone on this track has to be down to Malcolm Young. But I'm going to just call out Angus here for this, because it's the tone on the solo that I'm thinking about. It's thick, it's warm, it's sustaining but smooth. It's not harsh in any way. It's just the perfect, I think, kind of bluesy rock tone, possibly with the exception of the Gary Moore one I mentioned earlier. But What a fantastic tone he gets on this. Again, you know, it's just good fun, foot stomping rock and roll. And you couldn't imagine this song or any song in this genre being played through, you know, a Mesa Boogie or, you know, any other brand of amplifier. It has to be Marshall. It needs that sort of gritty, congested, mid-range Marshall grunt that only really a Marshall can give. And, you know, it's, again, this track came out round about the time when I was first discovering the joys of distorted guitar and heavy rock music, or blues rock, or whatever you want to label it as. It was, I do remember back in the day that AC/DC were called a heavy metal band back in the late 70s. Difficult to imagine that term being applied these days, isn't it? But, you know, it was when I was first discovering the joys of the overdriven qualities of a guitar tone, and this was one of the tracks that made a big impression on me. So, you know, that is why it's on this list. Fantastic, fantastic example of the Marshall amplifier tone. So there you go, folks. Those are my 5 favourite examples, or 5 of my favourite examples of the sound that can be got out of a cranked up Marshall amp. Let me know, I'm sure you will do, what yours are. Leave a comment or two below, and if you want to give me a line or two about what it is that, you know, makes your list what it is, then please feel free to do so. I love reading the comments and kind of hearing, you know, what makes you guys tick. Actually, I do enough blethering on here to tell you what goes on inside my mind. It's nice to kind of get a bit of a back and forth going on. So there you go, folks. My 5 of my favourite Marshall tones. Hope you've enjoyed the video and found it reasonably entertaining. That is, after all, the point of doing all of this. And if you have done so, then please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you haven't already done so. And why not give me a like while you're at it? Don't forget the live stream, 5 PM UK time on Friday, where we sit around and have a beer and talk about all manner of things. I'm sure our favourite Marshall guitar tones will probably be a topic of conversation this week. It's a fantastic way to kick off the weekend, and I'd love to see you there. But till then, I'll bid you all a good day and say thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time. Look after yourselves, folks. Stay well, stay safe, and above all, stay sane. Bye for now.